Well, hello everyone. Welcome to World at War Comics. I am so excited to have these amazing guests on today representing Gungnir. If you haven't heard of them, you're about to an incredible publisher with all kinds of amazing titles. So let me go through the line. I could probably speak about 5 minutes on everything that's been accomplished for every single person individually, if not more. So we'll kind of contain it, but we'll definitely go over a lot of their backgrounds as we go through the interview. But Mr. Matt Medley, the publisher, the chief creative officer for Gungnir. We have Mr. Steve Orlando, award-winning writer, has done a lot of really cool things for DC. I'm a big DC fan, so Batman, your series with Martian Manhunter was incredible. Wonder Woman and a lot of other stuff. And then we got Mr. Jim Krueger, who, man, Jim, I mean, it could take a while to go through some of the stuff that I've seen. Eisner winning, writer, creator. You've done a whole lot of incredible stuff with some of the big publishers. Gentlemen, thank you so much for spending some time with me this morning. I cannot wait to learn more about Gungnir. I also want to mention that a couple copies of two amazing titles were sent to me, which I would love to kind of go over. Those were a lot of fun to read, and we will cover those here in a moment. But first off, I hope everyone had a great week last week. Hopefully, you had some time off and you weren't writing or doing all the publisher type stuff, and you were able to spend some time with friends, family, and loved ones.
Lots of turkey, lots of cranberry sauce. It was much needed.
Well, very good. I think what I'd love to start off with, if that's okay, is can you kind of talk a little bit about Gungnir, how this came about, and really kind of the story behind it and what you want to be known for as a publisher?
Yeah, so about 2 years ago now, after I was leaving my post at Heavy Metal, I had worked a lot with Steve there, and I'd hit him up, and I was like, I have this idea for like a science fiction genre storytelling company where we really focus on the idea that genre storytelling is the philosophy of today. You want to have fun, you want to tell stories that take you on a journey, but also maybe some that have some really fun lessons, no matter how wacky or kooky or abstract they may be. And Steve, I'm fortunate enough to have gotten him on board with it, and that's been an amazing journey. And we'll dig more into that. And then with Jim, it was this amazing happenstance. I had gotten brought in to creative direct Steve Aoki's Hero Quest graphic novel series, and Jim wrote it, and an incredible job. And we were given the task of putting together a 300-page, part prose, part graphic novel book in about what 110 days, Jim. It was an
It was like
amazing.
impossible. It was an impossible thing.
And we brought in about 30 artists to make it happen. And when you go to war like that with someone, you sort of come out as blood brothers. And I showed Jim what we were cooking up at Gungnir, and he too was excited to join the ranks. So it's been a blessing to have these two incredible creatives as our editorial team, and they too have amazing books that'll be coming out in the next year or two. So just exciting stuff all around.
I
Yeah.
feel a little weird because I feel like Matthew has seen all my wounds, all my scars. Going to war, you know.
No secrets anymore, right?
On either
Yeah,
side, on
I
either
think I'm
side,
in big.
really.
I think I'm in big trouble.
Well, I love it that you've all come together around this idea of publishing these amazing titles. Just to give you a few of the titles, which I was able to get my hands on, and one of them, and I'll share my screen here so we can look at your website here in a second. But the Tales of Blood and Ink, the Chabacubra, which was a lot of fun. A little twist at the end I wasn't ready for. We don't want to give too much away, but incredible writing. The artwork was a lot of fun. And then I also got this other title called The Mutant Cats, which also, in a completely different way, was a lot of fun as well. Gave me a lot of memories of some of the NFT stuff that we've seen in the past, just from an art perspective, which brought back good or bad memories, depending on how much you invested in NFTs at that time when it exploded. But the artwork is absolutely incredible, extremely bright and colorful. And the storyline was a lot of fun. I was laughing and I really got a kick out of it. But there's a lot of titles. So I thought maybe if it's okay, team, I would love to pull up the website and let's just take a look at some of the cool stuff that you all are doing.
And while you're pulling that up, Steve edited Chupacabras. I think the first project we'd worked on outside of heavy metal together. Is that right, Steve?
I believe that's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Goons and Goblins, Kyle Fenrich, the artist, is irreverable. He does the inks and the colors, just incredible. Lip Wei Cheng did the cover and chapter pages, and Steve made my writing acceptable.
Yeah.
I'm very blessed with his editing and perspective shifts. And I think if I forget another comma, I might get arrested, or I still get night tremors from some of the notes, but he is not just a great writer, but incredible editor.
Well, and
Absolutely.
we live 3,000 miles away, so no matter how much Matt might torture me or vice versa, it's cost prohibitive to go and enact vengeance. So it works out.
You're in a safe place, Steve, it sounds like.
Oh,
And
you think I'm the one that's in danger? Well, that's
No, I'm the one that's in danger.
both of you sound pretty safe where you're at. That's good to know. But yeah, Mutant Cats was a lot of fun, and like I said, the art is just next level, and the colors in this are gonna blow you away. It's vibrant every single page. I mean, you end up staring at a couple of the pages for quite a while because I even think that there's possibly some hidden gems that you probably need to look for in the art as you're reading it. So I'd love to go back and kind of find some of those because there's just a lot there. And then, like we mentioned just a few moments ago, the Chupacabra Tales of Blood and Ink was absolutely incredible as well. This gave me, I mean, there's a lot of conspiracy theories out there with a bunch of things that are going on, and I try not to get too involved in them, but they're fun to listen to and to create a story that kind of mirrors some of the stuff that's being told out there. I just thought that was really awesome, very sophisticated, and the storyline has a lot of heart to it as well. Some loss at the beginning, maybe not as much loss as we thought as you get to the end, but a lot of fun, man. A lot of fun. Scary in some instances, and I think relatable as well.
Yeah, we when we were looking for the artist for it, I really thought there'd be this fun sort of juxtaposition on telling a relatively dark story with pulpy styled art. And I just loved the idea of that. And then I found Kyle Goons and Goblins on Instagram. My buddy Johnny, I found him and said, "Hey, what do you think of this guy?" And I reached out and pitched Kyle the story, and he loved it. And we're now cooking up ideas for volume 2, which I think will be really fun. That one's already in the works in some ways from a story narrative point of view. But yeah, I grew up on Buffy, right? And I grew up on, Sabrina and the Archie comics and all of that stuff. And I wanted to tell a story that invoked the heritage of that, but maybe was a little bit darker, a little bit more of a mystery, and tell something that maybe had a flip at the end that was more shocking than some of those stories usually have. And I think we did a pretty fun job achieving those notes.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. A lot of fun. And boy, if there's going to be more, I think that's pretty exciting as well. I feel like you could go in this area for quite a while, to be quite honest, man. There's just I
Yeah,
rocks
me,
to unturn and all kinds of good stuff.
me and my buddy Eric and Nando were literally having one lunch one day in Century City here in LA, and started kicking around the idea of uh, billionaire blood transfusion secret societies, and that was the impetus for the whole thing. Was that was the conversation over a salad at Mendocino Farms about two years ago now. It was like January 2023, and they sort of bought it in the room with their production company. And we're all working on the adaptation right now for screen. It's pretty exciting.
Oh wow.
And they've been champions of the idea in the world, and and the culture of taking a Latin American based story and sort of bringing that to that American pulpy sci-fi world. And that was also like the idea is like, how do we take this culture? And I'm half Brazilian, so the whole Latin American culture is really near and dear to me. And I was like, how do we take this ideology and tell it in something that was absurd, right? Just like really absurd, and really, one of the things I love to do is like you figure out where 10 is on the dial and you go to 20. And I feel like we did that in some of the scenes here, but they don't really feel that crazy because the art is so much fun.
Yeah, it kind of offsets the shock the art does,
Exactly. That was the hope.
But 20 is the only way to make the furniture rattle. So
right?
that's the right thing while you're reading.
Exactly.
Exactly. No, it was so much fun, and I hope there's more. My wife is Mexican, so we've heard a lot of stories in her family about chupacabra, and I just think it's so fun to be able to take something like that and kind of blend it in with some things that people think are happening with Illuminati and all this other stuff that's going on in the world. There's so much craziness being talked about that is unverifiable, but really fun to kind of hear. You hope it's not true, and then you get a story like this, and it just, I don't know. Maybe that's why it's out there, just so that you could write stories like this.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, Steve runs the Illuminati, so
Oh, is that
that
right?
helps.
Is it an East Coast headquarters thing, Steve, or what's going on?
Well, I can't tell you where we meet. I mean,
Oh,
come
okay.
on.
I love
Besides right behind you. But
it. That doesn't freak me out at all. I love it. I love it. So, I mean, just as far as from a publishing standpoint, it looks like and feels like really the focus will be larger trades, graphic novels, as opposed to the traditional floppy that most collectors are used to, right? Is that about right?
Yeah, you know, I think we've all worked in comics for a while, and floppies are amazing, and there's a culture and a community around them that's undeniable. But for me and for us, I think the idea of telling complete stories at once and telling them in prestigious books. All of our books are hardcover. Our graphic novels come in a custom box. Our prose don't. But the idea that the book itself is the collectible, not just the story, lends itself more to trades rather than floppies. And at least for the foreseeable future, our focus is telling these completed works.
Yeah, yeah. I will tell you when I received them, I didn't know how they would be received. You and I kind of went back and forth, and you were kind enough to send me a couple examples. But when I got it, that beautiful box as you're opening it, I mean, the presentation of your works was absolutely beautiful. So as fans start to know more and jump in, I think they're going to be really surprised. Not only the well-told stories and the art, just the hardbound. It's really well done. Um, I don't know. I thought the presentation was amazing. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yeah, we half serious, half joking. If you're gonna tear down trees, you might as well make them look beautiful.
Well, they're beautiful. We've had a lot of conversations on the podcast about how the rest of the world consumes storytelling in comic form. And really, just North America kind of is the only place in the world that has this floppy culture. Everyone else is more graphic novel trade, right? So I feel like maybe, as a publisher, right, it feels like I don't know if that was taken in consideration, just to have that kind of global consumer base by going just straight to trade and then opening up more doors, especially, France, Germany, Spain, some of those
Totally.
countries that are big graphic novel consumers.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of that. I think Steve and Jim can both talk to some of the impossible deadlines that get enforced on people for floppies. And we want to tell great stories, not meet a deadline. And it's definitely easier to do that on a trade than it is on a floppy.
Yeah, yeah. As far as trade goes too, right? from a reader standpoint, when you're reading Spider-Man or Batman, and you're reading a comic book that's been around for so many years, and you're on issue 963 or whatever it is, right? As you're telling these stories or story arcs, there is at times, right, there needs to be a little bit of fluff written in those to be able to extend stories. I feel like when you have a trade, you get a lot of meat, especially when it's all written together at one time, right? You don't need a lot of fluff within it. I don't know if I'm speaking out of turn. Obviously, that's not my specialty, but you could tell when a trade comes out and it comes out in trade form as opposed to floppy, it feels like the story is really tight. I don't know if you feel the same way from a creator standpoint, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Jim, Steve, you guys want to comment on? You guys have written for Marvel, so I haven't, so I'll let you guys take that.
I mean, I think this is different, the story, and the story is different, an ongoing book is a perpetual motion machine. And that's, the deadlines that Matt says, but also at least, in the classic timescale, because very few books are really ongoing right now these days. Um, you can't just be thinking about completing the A story because you already have to be seeding your next A story and your B and C story. So the thinking is a lot different. Versus when you're going right to OGN, like you said, um, it's you know the space you have. You want to tell a big bombastic complete story, and you don't necessarily have to worry to the same extent, at least, about what might come next. Of course, you want to have some strings to pull when you hopefully come back, and so on and so forth. Um, but I just think that I think the thinking is one is not better or worse, but it is certainly different. I mean, and now I'm working on some of the digital first things for Marvel, and talk about a monthly perpetual motion machine. These are one every week. So I mean, I've essentially been writing a 6-page weekly for like 3 years at this point. And I look great. I'm not going gray at all. But and the thinking is different there too. I think the way you see it more is like where your quote unquote arc ends hit, where your cliffhangers hit. I mean, when you read a book that's collected of 20 or 24-page issues, yeah, it's going to feel a little different, because those were originally written to have some sort of giant, like, I must come back next month cliffhanger at the end of every issue. Especially in modern times, when the reader was more assured in the days when like 100,000 units was the cancellation threshold, not the success threshold. You kind of knew people were coming back, so you could maybe have a lower key ending. But at least for my time in the business, I mean, the first full issue I ever wrote, I got nailed for having too soft of a cliffhanger, and the editor basically said, "Well, it wasn't 1984 anymore, and every issue has to have like a massive rug pull cliffhanger, or otherwise people might just not come back." So, yeah, I mean, you're responding to different readerships and different behaviors that match the format, and so they are all going to be different. But I don't think one is necessarily better or worse, at least from a creative sense. For our health, one is definitely better. And that's what we're doing here at Gungnir.
Yeah.
Well, and when I think about sequential, month to month versus an OGN or a complete story in itself, I think about the fact that in a sequential, you're almost creating the need for a 30-day intermission to think about it, to want the next chapter, to kind of wait and see what happens next. Where in OGN, it's like I have to get people there. I have to move them through the entire piece so that at the end of it, they want to read it again. I always write in with my stuff to be read again, to be appreciated again, to be seen in a new light. And I think that's the specialness of an OGN.
Yeah. So is it fair to say that although, there's really no issue between the two, the preference would be some of like a trade for all of you from a writer standpoint then?
I mean,
At least
I have the likes and dislikes of about a 95-year-old man. Like uh, so I
I can
actually
verify that, by the way.
it's true. I love Werther's and Pepsi AC, but No, like I actually really like working periodicals because like I do secretly have the soul of someone who was writing in 1942, and that's the business to me, like it's show business, kid. It's comics. You pick it up at the newsstand, and that's very romantic to me. Um, so I like it. At the same time, like
Was that Stan Lee, by the way? Was that
well, I only
the
have two
Stan Lee
as for
impersonation?
folks. Yeah, I mean, I only have two voices, Jim. I have two different New York voices. I have Old Russian Man from when I lived out of the country, and then in theory my own. But that's debatable. Yeah, no, so I like it. But I would, that doesn't mean that there's not things I would like to improve about it. Lead time would be great.
Yeah.
Like things like that. But from a creative standpoint too, like a periodical does give you it's not as tight. It does, you do have a little more room. I was just thinking about this, and the way you deliver the story is different. Things in an OGN, which you can also might as well, I mean, for people to use a more common phrase, like to me, for the purpose of this, you can think of that as a feature film. You got to be more potent in your storytelling because you only have so many pages, like 200 pages, 250 pages. You only have 2.5 hours. And I was thinking about this was my fiance and I were watching the end of Superman and Lois last night.
Mm.
And I think that Tyler Hoechlin has given us probably the best Superman since Christopher Reeve, maybe in some ways better. But why I say maybe in some ways, it's because when you think about it, as indelible as Christopher Reeve was, for example, and this is the biggest example I can come up with, you know, we only got him for 2.5 hours, or if you count the other movies, like maybe 10 cumulatively.
Mhm.
I've heard that there are third and fourth Superman movies that he stars in. So even if you count all those, you get him for 10 hours. But with the world of Superman and a periodical, which is akin to a television show, like a network show, um, 52 episodes. We have 52 hours with these characters to explore parts of their lives that aren't necessarily better or worse, but from a triage and utility standpoint, you might just not have room to. So for me, I like that benefit of going periodical. I like that maybe there is an issue where it is just it's Strucker and Nick Fury sitting across from a table and growling at each other, which is what Jonathan did at the end of Secret Warriors. But that was earned after 28 issues or whatever. That was a climax, and I think that it's nothing is impossible, but it's easier to pull off things like that and take little interesting digressions and diversions when you have the room of a periodical versus, oh, we only have 250 pages, or oh, we only have, a couple hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for me, when it comes to writing an OGN versus periodicals, I just love the idea of that. I think of it as I'm writing a movie on paper,
Mhm.
right? And it's like a 2D movie, and I think you can probably feel that when you read Chupacabra. It felt like there's three acts,
Yep.
and I'm taking you like when I envision those pages, the ideas that I'm writing, like I think it could be a one for one into a film, right? And that's sort of how I attack OGNs, and it's a little harder to attack periodicals that way because you need the roller coaster in every issue, and sometimes when you're writing it as an OGN, maybe there's just two roller coasters versus every chapter, right? Maybe there's just two big anti-climaxes and something that brings you for a turn. But the idea is that there's a singular idea that you're trying to share at the end. And with periodicals, there's other things to consider other than that goal. So for me, I'm always thinking of it as, and Gungner, as you know, does prose and graphic novels.
Yeah.
So whether it's a prose that we're signing or a graphic novel that we're signing, the idea is that do I see this as a film? Because or even a TV show, right? It could be a show, but the idea is like, how do I see this off the page? And that doesn't mean that we want to make something for the page that's actually designed for a film, because I know that's something that people get really upset about when your book feels like it was just a movie.
Yeah.
More so, it's like, how do we make something for the page that feels like it can be
Mhm.
a movie? I think I might have just said something that got Steve really upset. No, I'm just
No,
kidding.
no, I just think
No, I
I
want
mean,
I want to get Steve
wonder-
upset too. I want to get Steve upset too. Um, if I have Nick Fury and Baron Strucker together in a scene, I want them shooting the shit out of each other. I don't want them, having a coffee, having a tea, pass me the sugar, Nick. Would you like some honey with that, Baron Strucker? I'm like, no, fuck that.
Jim is
I
showing that
want these guys shooting the shit out of each other.
he's very up on modern Marvel comics
Yeah.
because that is definitely what happens in that issue.
Oh, thank God I didn't read it. So,
I love it, man. I love it. Oh, well, let's talk about some of the new stuff that we were kind of talking about before we jumped on, if that's okay. Maybe Jim, we could start with you. You have something pretty new coming up. Do you want to kind of
This
tease
might be a
some
world
stuff?
premiere on
Real
World War Comics. I don't think we've talked about this publicly yet.
wait,
And
wait, wait. What are we talking about exactly? Are we talking about
yeah,
PP?
yeah, you can go into it. Yeah, I mean, I'll just quickly preface that when Jim pitched me this idea, I greenlit all three books before he even wrote a page because it's such a great idea.
I love
I'm so excited for this.
And thank God he did. It was probably before he read my writing. Thank God.
it. I'll send him your resume, Jim. I think you'd be all right.
So Matt, can I say the title?
Yes, please say as much
Okay.
as you want.
So I think between reading the original Jan Barrie Peter Pan and seeing finally Finding Neverland and kind of hating Hook, apart from the first half hour. And I know lots of people love it, so apologies, but I figured out an Earth X way, like an understory to approach the Peter Pan mythology. And we're talking about a 3-page or a 3-book story that's really about Peter growing older and his odyssey from beginning to end. It begins post the classic Peter Pan story we know and deals with Peter getting older and older and older and his continual battle with Hook. And I'm so proud of it. It's like one of those things like I have to write this
Yeah.
before I die. It's got to be done. In fact, I'm really going to push the deadline for the last book because I can't die until it's over. So this is my plan for longevity.
And how
You
long
want to
have you
tell
been?
everyone the title?
Oh, yeah.
What's that?
You want to tell everyone the title?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. It's called Never a Never Boy.
I love it. And how long have you been sitting on this idea, Jim?
I've been sitting on it and hoping it would hatch for quite a while. And thanks to Matthew, it finally is hatching, I guess, so to speak. But there was a beginning idea, and I shared with Matthew, and there's a moment in it, a dialogue moment in it that I think is the greatest thing I've ever written in my life.
Wow. Wow. I mean, that must
Oh,
feel
and I'm worried. I'm worried. Like, what happens after that? Oh
And
crap!
for the record, he sent me the first chapter, and I said, "Do this, keep going."
good.
It is written so cool, like the writing style from the perspective of Peter and some other characters, like makes it impossible to put the book down.
Yeah.
Like I read the first chapter, and I was like, "Wait, did I just read like 30 pages in 10 minutes?" It's so engaging and engrossing. I'm so excited for everybody to see it.
And
And
do
and
we?
when you
Okay.
read the original J.M. Barrie novel, you get something very different than like Disney or Spielberg or other people who have approached this subject matter. Like there's a sadness inherent. There's still the heroism, there's still everything that makes Peter Pan great, but there's a sadness and a melancholy in not growing up. And it's that you know Matthew, I'm so grateful, and Steve, I'm so grateful, are allowing me to really embrace.
Yeah. I love it.
And maybe I've seen Tombstone too many times, but that's giving something away.
Nothing wrong with that. I love that. Do we have kind of a date of when fans can expect for the at least the first arc to be ready, or not yet to get their hands on it?
Most likely 2026 Q1.
Gotcha. Okay. Exciting. That's awesome.
I mean, I'll be done well before then for one, but yeah, whatever Matthew says goes.
We
He's
usually
got he's got
our distribution partner likes about 9 months from final book.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the idea. But we'll be teasing it way before then.
Yeah, yeah. And so you already have an artist in place and you're already like starting from the art perspective, the sequentials,
It's
or
a prose.
oh, it's a
oh, this
prose.
is
Yeah.
good,
Oh,
yeah.
that's awesome, man. Incredible.
And I mean,
Incredible.
while it's like I've been doing a lot of not only like Matthew and I got together, of course, because of Hero Quest, which was prose, and I've been producing and writing a lot of short stories. Matthew, is it okay for me to talk about frankincense?
Please.
Oh, okay. So, and it's out like right now. I have a collection of 13 short haunted Christmas stories called The Frankincense Monster and Other Creepy Christmas Stories. Next year, there'll be another 12. The idea is to have an advent calendar of holiday horror for people to read once collected. But it's like kind of for the whole family. So I've been really stretching and building and, all this thing in as a writer of prose in addition to screenplays and film and consulting and all that kind of thing. So, but this Peter Pan, Never Never Boy, it is one of the things I want to give to the world. One of the things, and I'm so grateful to my friend Matthew and Steve again, for this possibility.
Well, it sounds absolutely amazing. I cannot wait to get my hands on that. It sounds like
I'm
it's
not,
going to be
I'm just gonna
incredible.
say this. I'm not gonna ruin it, but the conceit that Jim did not talk about from the book is the cleverest idea I've ever heard in retrofitting an old story to creating a viable reason for why events happened in the original that propel this new edition forward. It's so clever that, like, to me, that's the part of this that's just so exciting.
And Matt says
I
this as
could say
someone who's
that.
seen
Oh,
Wicked
sorry.
five
Go ahead,
times.
Steve.
So
Say that again, Steve.
I said Matt says this as someone who's already seen Wicked 5 times.
Well, I haven't seen it yet, but all I've heard is positive things, so I got to get out there and watch that too.
I had this amazing lunch with Sam Raimi a number of years ago. It kind of became part of my origin story, but we sat together at a commissary, and I think it's Sony, and we were talking about the long story. We were talking about IP that continues on. We were talking about like comics and TV and movie sequel after movie sequel, and he gave me two rules for writing that I embrace still. And the first one is obvious. The first one is like he said, you know what, you have to continue the story. You have to take it a step further, even if you're rebranding it, even if you're doing a brand new like relaunch or whatever, you have to take it further. But then he said something and he said, this goes beyond just nostalgia. This goes beyond you know, just making people feel warm. He said, you have to remind people why they love this in the first place. And that's been my approach to things like Earth X and, justice and anything I write that has anything to do with a character. There has to be the sense of making people go, oh, yeah, that's why I love this. And so that's what we're all creating with this Peter Pan project.
Well, it sounds amazing,
And
Jim.
I feel like
Cannot
all
wait.
of Gungnir is
Yeah.
about this, whether it's sci-fi, whether it's fantasy, whether it's anything. Gungnir is about not just telling a new story or telling a continued story, but saying, "Oh, this is why I love graphic novels. This is why I love comics. This is why I love science fiction. This is why I love fantasy. This is why we all love Matthew Medney."
I mean, our our current prose book that's out right now, Forward as Always, written by Olin Rogers and Jake Sidwell, is exactly that. Like if you read that, it's just a old school classic science fiction adventure. Olin is the creator of the show Final Space. If you haven't seen that animated show, in my opinion, it's the greatest animated show ever made. Full stop. Jake did all the music for it, and then they came together to write this book about Gaius and this science fiction world that's I don't even want to ruin it. It's just like it's this adventure where they create colloquial terms that are simple words. And when you can use simple words, it just makes it so much more beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll have to get my hands on that as well, Matt.
Simple words and sinful words. I want them both.
I love it. I love it. Well, Steve, you have something coming up as well, right?
We do, yeah. I'm gonna be. I mean, there's a variety of things coming up with Gungnir and everywhere. I'm a busy guy.
Yep.
But what is coming up with Gungnir is I'm going to be doing my first, at least long form prose work. Matt and I are writing it together. Matt's an old hat at the Books Without Pictures game. And so we're going to be working on a book called The Diplomat together. It's a cross-country political revenge thriller, I guess is what I'll say from the outset. And it's me, so it's also pretty grindhouse. But but it's an idea Matt sort of first broached with me as like a kernel, probably almost a year ago, I feel like. And we were batting it back and forth, and finally found a way in. So we're working on it right now. It is gonna be, like I said, my first prose credit really outside of doing like introductions for collections and things like that. And I think it's also going to really show what Matt and I bring to the table. Like we do think very differently in a way that is cumulative, that's additive, even if creatively it's sometimes combative in a positive way. But the result is going to be the best book possible. Like that's what you want. You want to beat things out with your co-writer, and you want to pull no punches, right? Because need to be as good as they can be, not just as good as your ego will allow them to be. So it's why I love co-writing in general, but it's why I'm excited to be doing it in prose for the first time. And not just because I can sort of latch onto Matt's coattails, like I know what I'm doing when there's not pictures involved. Um, but I'm excited about The Diplomat. Like it's got a great lens on the good and bad of the American dream. It's got a great lens on sort of the push and pull between vengeance and forgiveness, which I mean, I've written both books about clones of Jesus and Wonder Woman. So the idea of that push and pull between uh, revenge and compassion, I can say it a lot of different ways, is always something that I'm really interested in, and we're going to dig into that deep here. It's lead, and I'll let Matt talk about it in a minute. He's a righteous character with real motivations to do terrible things, tangible, raw motivations. But, when you have been driven by this wound for years and years and years, even decades, like you might even get what you're looking for, but at the end of the day, like you're still covered in scars, right? So like it's gonna really pick apart what we think of as vengeance and also where the story ends. I think I wrote a book years ago called Kill a Man, which is inspired by Emil Griffith. I wrote it with my friend Philip Kennedy Johnson. And the short version is inspired by Emil Griffith, who is this bisexual boxer in the 60s. He was called a slur in the ring, and I mean he killed the other person that he was boxing. And when I say where the story ends, that's what I'm talking about. Because it's easy for people within the community to say, oh, good, that guy called him a name and he fucking killed him, but the reality, of course, is much different. He had to live with that for his whole life, whether or not it was righteous or just, or I won't say justified, but, like explained. Um, he still lived with that, good or bad, and wrote a book about it. And when, Philip and I read that and decided to analyze that with our own work, that's kind of what's going on here. You've never had someone who's more deserving of revenge and justice and all these things, but that doesn't magically mean there's not a cost. That doesn't magically mean there's not a lot of baggage with it. And that's what we're going to be talking about here, along with, of course, some of the nastiest, most Bauhaus action you can come across in prose.
I love it. I love it. And then,
Yeah, I mean,
oh, go ahead, please, Matt. No,
real
no,
quick,
please.
for
Yeah.
someone like Steve who writes Scarlet Witch and other amazing, science fiction, Marvel superhero characters, and someone like me who's just like the biggest sci-fi nerd, I thought it would be apropos for us to write something completely not science fiction first, right? That was the idea is like let's take the characters that we can create and the dramas in them and put it into a more thriller-esque sort of political drama, as Steve said. And I think we have a really great conceit in it, and I'm excited to get to get that out to the world.
Yeah, it sounds absolutely incredible and very timely as well. Can you, Steve, you mentioned earlier, just from an audience standpoint, a lot of independent creators um, like to listen to the podcast. You talked about the differences between, trade and floppy. Now let's talk a little bit about prose. Is there a certain approach that you take to prose that's much different, or is it all very familiar and similar to you from a writing perspective?
I mean, in a way, I'm not the one to ask because we're still figuring it out, but I guess that's the answer, everyone else in this call has published prose.
Mm.
But it is different. You are the role, the gig is just different. A comic book script is more like a screenplay, and it's not one to one. But the creation of a comic is almost always a collaboration in some of some kind. Some of the control and thus responsibility is out of your hands. It's all you on prose, man. Like one way or another, and also the way you get things across varies, and we're teasing that out right now. A panel description, which readers never see, depending on what your artist wants, might be shockingly sparse and shockingly utilitarian. It also might be much less so, depending on if your individual artist wants certain kinds of context and illumination in there. That's really a case by case basis. But the point is, half of what you do as a comic book writer is in public facing, and it's in the form you deliver it. It is public facing in that, your creative collaborators put visuals to it, so on and so forth. But what you turn in is not necessarily public facing in the form you created. And then, of course, the dialogue is, but even that is affected by how the letterer puts it on the page and the font style, all these things that are not necessarily your sole purview. You're a team, of course. Everybody gets to say, at least when I do a book, but it's not your sole purview. For better or worse, all you have is that word on the page in prose, and I mean, sure, you could do some gimmicky shit, like pages with one word on them, fuck with your font size and all that shit, but that's exactly what it is. That's a lot of sizzle to hide whether or not there's steak there. So, for me, yeah, it's good. It's been an interesting journey, and we're still on it right now to sort of refocus how I tell a story, and keep it interesting. Especially for someone who just, it's no secret, perhaps if you read my work, I'm not a fan of internal monologue. I don't like triple explaining things for readers, like a panel of someone picking up a coffee cup, him saying, "Wow, I need some coffee," and internal monologue being, or rather, third person in this case, being like, "And then he picked up a coffee cup." Like that is not shit that interests me. So, um, I don't necessarily have an overly wordy style anyway. So it's been interesting to pivot, and sort of decide how we do tell a story when, by necessity, I've got to be wordier.
Yeah.
That said, I'm reminded of Shannon Wheeler and Too Much Coffee Man, who says, if I feel this good after one cup of coffee, how much better will I feel after five?
I love it, Jim. I love it. Well, I mean, absolutely incredible everything that the entire team has going on. I'm definitely going to share the link below because you could get lost on your website with everything that is currently out that you could get your hands on. And then with the news of Peter Pan Trilogy 2026, we're going to hear probably a lot more, probably I would say mid next year as you start to promote it. And then obviously the Diplomat sounds absolutely amazing. Do we have timing on the Diplomat? Is that like a 2026 thing as
It
well,
is.
probably?
Yeah, and
Perfect.
then some of our 2025 releases is a book called Aeon
Mm.
that I penned with Joe Harris,
Yeah. I
And
know
my
Joe.
co-creator on Beyond Kuiper, John Connolly. The three of us tag teamed it with the amazing art of Lorenza Palmani, this Italian artist. She is incredible. We spent 5 years on this book. It's at the end of time. The last seven sentient beings convene at the last black hole to discuss the trials and tribulations of the Stardust ancestors they arose from.
That
Yeah,
sounds so good.
it's 12 Angry Men meets Doctor Who.
Yeah, exactly.
That's my elevator for that.
Yeah, and it's amazing. And then we have Last Breeds that comes out in the summer next year. Jonathan Ball and GMB group. I can never pronounce his last name. GMB, they're amazing Canadians. I've worked with when I was at Heavy Metal a little bit, and we had this idea for this Book of Eli um, sort of meets Tarzan story where this dude has a bunch of apex predators and has to march across the country to save humanity.
Love it, man. I love it. Sounds incredible. I am so appreciative that one, I was sent these two amazing titles. I will make sure I share those with our audience on another video. But so happy for everything that is taking place at Gungnir. It sounds like we're going to have an incredible 2025 and 2026 just from everything that's coming out. Is there anything that we're missing that we haven't covered today for fans to know?
No, I think, if you're looking for great science fiction or fantasy, prose or graphic novels, our goal is that, you can read books on Kindles and you can read books on a variety of platforms. So when you buy our books, we try to make them as beautiful as possible so that when you're done with the reading experience, the book itself is an art piece. And
Yeah.
that's really important to us is that, for the life of a book, you probably read it for 1% of the time you own it. So we wanted to really take time and care into making the book itself something that you want to look at once you're done with it and create that emotional connection every time you see it on your shelf to remember those stories and the aspirations and the lies that the characters created. So yeah, we hope people get to join the family and as we like to say, join Odin's army.
Yeah, Odin's Army. Yeah. Well, I could tell you when I opened up the box that was sent to me, I was surprised at how big it was. For one, I'm like, I'm thinking of Gemini with a couple titles in there. And as I opened it and saw these beautiful boxes and pulled the plastic off, I mean, it was Christmas early for sure. But I could vouch, Matt, of having two of your titles now and the way that it was presented to me. It is very high end, very high class. And I will tell you, anybody that purchases anything from Gungnir, you're going to be very happy at how you receive it for sure. It is beautiful, and it's going to sit beautiful next to all my omnibus and trades that I have. And by far, these will be a couple of the most beautiful titles that I have, just the way that it's printed and the quality that it's printed on. So, congratulations on everything that has happened up to this point. It sounds like you have an incredible couple years worth of titles that are coming out. Big fan of all of you individually. I do want to thank you. I know you're all very busy. I know, Steve, you got a lot going on today. We were talking a little bit earlier as well. But thank you so much for entrusting me with your publishing company and everything that you're doing in your stories. It was a blast, and I hope that we could do this again.
Oh,
Absolutely.
it'd be our pleasure to do it again. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah. And just a last question as we get into January and we reboot all of the Comic Cons. Is there plans that you'll be at certain Comic Cons so that if fans do pick these up, they could come meet the creators behind it?
Yeah, we're working through our 2025 con schedule. I mean, I know Steve and Jim are probably at dozens individually this year, and Gungnar will make an appearance probably more to the middle end of next year, but we'll start doing conventions in the next 12 months for sure.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well,
Yeah,
gentlemen,
cannot wait.
oh yeah, I mean, I can't wait to one, Matt. Now I got to get in front of you and the rest of the team for these titles, but I cannot wait to get my hands all of them. And Steve, believe it or not, I have met you a couple times at different cons. I know you're very much attending different cons. San Diego, I've seen you at, so I'll definitely meet you again. Jim, I hope I get to bump into you, and Matt, you as well. But congratulations. Beautiful, beautiful stuff that you're producing. And I hope we could do this again as more titles come out, and we could maybe
Yeah.
read them together and talk about them.
That would be amazing. And just the last thing to show, like this shirt that I'm wearing is one of our characters from Aeon. We take all the art from each of our books and turn them into merch so that we try to create like a holistic experience around the title. So it starts with the book, but that's just the crucible. And then we have art, prints, and t-shirts and sweatshirts, and we're getting some pins made. So we're really trying to create the whole experience for people that enjoy the different titles.
We'll make sure we post all of that, Matt. I don't think that's going to be an issue at all with fans wanting to get their hands on some of the beautiful art that are in these titles. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Really appreciate everything that you're doing. And until next time, I hope all the best for you.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You bet. Thank you.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.